Round of applause for your great chairwoman. She's doing a great job. When I heard she was running for chair, I knew she would do a great job because we interacted a whole lot before she did that. I am really excited to be here. I'm so excited to hear what you heard at your road rally today. I love that you hit your numbers. I just tweeted that out to all my followers. And I love the energy I'm feeling here and the fire that I'm feeling. Let me just, I actually brought a few books with me if anyone's interested. We had a nice meeting about a year ago, my first book. I have been spending like 2.5 years trying to tell the country, anyone who would listen, what I've written in these books. And what I've been trying to tell people is, listen, most of us in America, and this includes some Republicans still, independents, but clearly Democrats, we actually believe that politics is about taking viewpoints that we have that we're confident are good, and that we're confident that if we explain well, people will vote for, and making our case. And if we win, good for us. If we don't win, we got to figure out how to do better. That's sort of been our approach, right? I mean, this is a very quick summary of 2 long books, by the way, but that's our approach. But it starts with a confidence level that our viewpoints are actually ones that most people agree with. Or if we do a good job, like collective bargaining, like good public schools, like a woman's right to choose, like common sense gun reform. I don't want the angry neighbor banning books from my kids. I think that should be up to me and my family, but out. These are things that most people agree with. Broader health care, on and on. But then I've been warning people, and this is the part where people push back a little bit. Hey, there's another side right now in politics that's getting really fierce. And this side has lost confidence that it can do everything I just described. This side actually has figured out that its views of what it wants to do are so unpopular and so toxic. This side has figured out it cannot win with those views. It knows it can't. It knows, this side knows, Mitch McConnell knows, the Koch brother knows, this Huffman guy in Columbus knows, that when they do things like ban abortion, no exceptions for rape or incest, so the 10-year-old rape victim has to go to Indiana, that's a losing issue for them. Only 10% of Ohioans actually agree with that. Mitch McConnell told Lindsey Graham when he brought a national abortion ban to the Senate, or said he wanted to, he said, don't you dare bring that near the Senate. We don't want to lose. They actually know. They actually know that most of their viewpoints, again, banning books, attacking the labor, keeping wages down, trickle-down economics, they know that all that is a losing position. And they know that if they simply have elections that are straight-up referenda on their views, they know they will lose. They know the result will be what happened in Kansas last August, or Kentucky last November, or Michigan last November, or even Wisconsin in April. They know this. And so what I've been trying to explain to people is they don't change their views because they know they're losing views. They don't try and persuade people because it's too hard to persuade when their views are that unpopular. Their goal is to subvert democracy enough that their views maintain even when they would otherwise lose. That they win even when they lose. They can rig the rules and still win with losing views. And that's why they gerrymander. That's exactly why they gerrymander. And that's why they suppress the vote of the other side as much as they can. Because they want to hold down the majority that's against them so their losing viewpoint can still win on election day. Now, I've had people, including my own dad, who spent most of his life as a Republican, he's sort of a moderate now, who say to me, and this comes up, wait, are you really accusing people of not believing democracy? And I'll say, and that's when I have to gear up with some backup arguments. And I'll say things like, well, did you see that when CPAC had a big conference, they went to Hungary to study Orban? That's sort of a hint. Because what he is doing is exactly what I just described. Subvert democracy enough to lock in unpopular views. And when they were done celebrating him in Hungary, they invited him to Texas. Tucker Carlson interviewed him. And then I'll say, and hopefully that gets me somewhere, then I'll say something like, did you see what Peter Thiel said? The guy who basically funded J.D. Vance's campaign. Did you see what Peter Thiel said 10 years ago? He wrote that he believes democracy is inconsistent with freedom. They're saying this. They're not hiding this. and maybe that persuades some people, maybe it doesn't. But now I have a really easy thing to tell everyone. Have you seen issue 1 in Ohio? Because issue 1 is the perfect encapsulation of their mindset about politics, isn't it? Yep. They know, and who gathered signatures to put the reproductive freedom petition on the ballot this November? Thank you. A wonderful job. Let's give a round of applause to everyone who did that. They know that that is supported by basically 59 to 60% of Ohio. They know they will lose, so they got to rig the rules. They literally pushed an election that was illegal to have in August. The new part of the Supreme Court let them do it, which is appalling. But it's the giveaway. It's everything I've been trying to say in these 2 books in one moment. They know they're going to lose. They know their position is unpopular. They know they will not be able to convince 50% of Ohioans to agree with them. So they desperately change the rules. It's what they've been doing for years. They got so used to it, they've done it in a matter of months. But it's bigger than even November, as much as that is so important. This allows them to not let the majority of Ohioans express their will if we want to raise the wages. Minimum wage, which is still too low in Ohio. It will make it very hard to get rid of this horrific gerrymandering that is leading to all of this. So they know all this. This is the perfect summary, the perfect sort of symbol of the way they are now governing, which is change the rules as quickly and as brutal as they can to win even when they lose. Losing means they only get 41%, they still get to win. That's what they're doing. Now here's the problem for them. And this gets to what you've all been seeing on your TV the last week. The problem for them is their argument to the voters of Ohio is a terrible argument. Can you imagine saying, I've been in office, we've got a couple office holders here. Can you imagine saying to voters, hey guys, will you give away some of your power so I can be less accountable as a politician? Like, that's the worst argument I've ever heard. And I don't care if you're, in your cities or a blue state or red state, a politician saying to the voters, would you please vote to strip yourselves of your power to direct the state's direction so I am less accountable as your elected official when I do things wrong or I'm out of tune with you? That's a terrible thing to ask. And most people who would be asked that would say, why would I ever do that? That makes zero sense. So they can't really just straight up tell us what they want. They have to fool people into giving away the power that otherwise people would never want to give away. And that's why for the last week, what have you seen? The most absurd, multi-million-dollar lies on your TV sets, in the mail. And what have the lies been? I want to talk about this for 1 second. I drove all the way up here, so I'm going to talk for a couple minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah.
What are the lies? What's the big lie you're hearing on your TV set?
Protect moms.
And more broadly, parental rights. And who's pushing the parental rights?
Right to life.
No, but who does Right to Life say is bringing all this stuff to Ohio? Out of state special interests, right? That's the big thing. That somehow it's so insulting to Ohio when you think about it. Somehow someone from California is going to come to Ohio and convince us to do things we otherwise wouldn't do. And that the reason we must fix this direct democracy that we've had for more than a century is because somehow these Californians and New Yorkers and who knows who else is swooping to Ohio all the time and convincing us to do things we otherwise would never do. Exactly. And by the way, everything they do is projection. They're the one with the billionaire trying to buy our Constitution. It's not us, folks. I was the head of the Ohio Democratic Party. If that was happening, I would have known it. Right? So the big lie that they have to lie because they can't admit that they're actually trying to convince everyone in Greene County to give them more power and take away their own power. They can't admit that. So I want to just disabuse, if we all have conversations next 2 days and this comes up, because I worry that it's working a little bit for them. I worry that they have started to make people think, yeah, we got to stop this stuff. Does anyone know the history of actually the amendments in Ohio that have come through the direct democracy process?
Clean Ohio.
Because once you know, Clean Ohio is one of them. Once you know that history, you know what an absolute pile of lies everything they're saying is, because that's how they convince people. Since 1913, anyone want to guess how many amendments have passed, have been on the ballot in Ohio to change their constitution? How many amendments have been on the ballot? Oh, see, you're an expert. Overall, how many? You just gave away my trick, by the
I
way.
think it's like,
No, higher than
I
71.
think it's like 300.
How many?
200.
Are you League of Women Voters? Yeah, there we go. I knew it. They know everything. Woo. Good. You're the only one I've ever had who knew the 227 times. What percentage of those have passed?
Pretty low.
Anyone want to guess?
25%?
How many?
56 or 57.
It's 55%. Okay.
Okay.
Whoa. So when you hear that, actually, when the people watching these TV ads, if they were to hear those numbers, wait, 227 passed. I'm sorry, we're on the ballot. 55% passed. They're probably thinking, oh my God, those ads are right. Someone has been convincing Ohioans to change our Constitution all the time. And what's the trick? You suggested it.
Well, only 19 of them were citizens.
Correct. Here's the trick, and it's just so outrageous. 156 of the 227 that had been on the Ohio ballot had nothing to do with the Citizen Initiative. It was the State House itself doing it. They're the ones who've used this all the time. They're the ones. Now, sometimes for a good reason. But they bring things up all the time and stick it on our ballot, often because they want a higher turnout in the election, don't they? Remember, in 2004, it was same-sex marriage ban.
That's right.
In the last 300 days, there have been 3 of these on our ballot, including issue 1, that they did. One of them last November, do you remember this? There was a ballot initiative that banned non-citizens from voting in Ohio. Even though they weren't voting in Ohio. There was nowhere in Ohio that was happening. So they're the ones. Yeah, maybe okay, one place. So here we have in our state the very people who are saying that the amendment process is being abused. They're the ones pushing it all forward. Unless they're the ones being bought off by out-of-state interests, this is all nonsense. And by the way, when they put them forward, 106 of their 156 passed. They have clearly some kind of advantage. When these things come up, I have never once heard one of these state reps say to the others, "Hey guys, this is a sacred document. Why are we doing this so much? Slow down." That never comes up, does it? But somehow they're trying to act as if the citizens themselves are the ones that are being overrun by out-of-state people and convinced to do it and go get the signatures you all got. So how many, if that was their story, and we've already kind of given away the punchline, but that's good. What's our story? How many have there been in 110 years in Ohio on the ballot from the citizens? 71. Why only 71? Who gathered signatures? Who gathered signatures in the last couple months? How hard was it?
Hard.
That's why there's only 71. It's really hard. It's hard. It's hard work. 44 counties, 100,000 signatures. Hard work. How many passed out of the 71? 19. In 110 years, 19 passed. That's the big scary thing. This is what they're trying to say, that somehow the 19 are this problem, that we somehow, among those 19, that's why we have to change it. Punish the citizen-led initiative effort because of that 19, and basically, they haven't changed the way they bring theirs forward. So, it's all a pile of lies. 19 to 110 years. You guys know a lot more than most people. Can you name some of the 19 that passed, that citizens led? Because maybe they're right. Maybe the TV ads in those 19 are some out-of-control leftist California initiatives that's just swept over Ohio. What were some of the 19? Did anyone know?
Gerrymandering.
Well, actually, that didn't beat through the legislature. But that's a good example. Sometimes when we gather the signatures, we pressure them to do something they wouldn't do. That's how we protected against animal abuse a few years ago, too, because the Humane Society did. Well, one of them was we lifted the minimum wage from like 6 1/4, I think it was, around there. Another one, this sounds like a big California interest, home rule for Ohio counties. Right? Oh, yeah, that's a big one that I know that the left really wanted everyone to do here. Or, yeah, exactly. Which used to be respected, by the way. How about a charter option for counties? How about integrating the National Guard? There was one amendment for women to be in the National Guard and another for African Americans. That was one that the citizens brought forward. Apparently the State House wasn't doing it. How about this sounds like a really, crazy radicals integrating the National Guard. How about capping property taxes in the county to 10 mils? If you want to go above that, you have to have a separate vote of the people. That's another one. And how about removing the term white man from the Constitution of Ohio that was right around the words about voting, which was leaving the impression that only white men can vote in Ohio. There was a vote on that because we actually wanted to comply with the United States Constitution. And it passed. Those are the issues that are a kind of the type that came through the citizens. Things that apparently the State House didn't want to do, that the citizens did what you just did a few months ago. It's all a massive lie, isn't it? That somehow this process that we have been using to make changes that we all can say made sense at the time, make very clear sense now, just like protecting a woman's right to abortion would do in Ohio, most people support it. They have taken all that and tried to make it sound insane for their supporters to show up angry and vote in 2 days. Here's the other trick, though. What's one thing that all the amendments I just mentioned have in common? Not one of them got 60% of the vote. Not one. If their rules were in place, we wouldn't have integrated the National Guard. We wouldn't have lifted the minimum wage. We wouldn't have removed this term white man as if that's the only people who could vote in Ohio. All of them. Those were all in the mid-50s, some of them barely over 50. Because just like it's hard to get signatures, it's hard to get to 60%. It's nearly impossible if someone is dedicated to keeping it from happening. And so even changes that we look back on as so important, so foundational, at the time in a world of politics, it's hard to achieve the number, and that's exactly why they made it so high. That even things that we now know made all the sense in the world that they weren't doing would not have been achieved. And that's in the end what this is all about. They don't want any change. Even change that makes so much sense only a few years later, that's what they don't want. It's all, the whole thing is a pack of lies. And here's the bottom line. They're doing it to scare the hell out of their own voters. And this is the thing, and this is, I put this in these books I've written. If you go back and think about it, their entire political strategy is about how to win when what they're pushing is unpopular. And that's why any poll right now that shows them underwater should never give you confidence. They're always underwater. That's their game, that's their mindset. We have to win even when our views are unpopular. And if issue one is unpopular, well, that's the same as everything else they're trying to do. So what do they do to overcome that reality? They suppress the vote of our side. Huge lines today in Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati. Not nearly as big in rural counties because we only have one early vote location no matter how big the county or small. New voter ID laws make it harder for one side to vote. Schedule in August when they don't think people are paying attention. And then on their side, scare the living hell out of their side. And that's what those ads have been about. Get people to show up. It reminds me so much of 2018. Richard Cordray was ahead of Mike DeWine going into the final weekend, and all of a sudden a caravan was coming to Ohio from Mexico. That made no sense to a swing voter, but to their base, that was a way to get them to show up. And right now, they are hitting that message. You've seen more yard signs. They spend 5 minutes on TV. They are working their tails off to lift their turnout to be the artificial majority for one day of this year, and that's on August 8th. And that's why what you did today, what you've been doing, hitting your numbers, and continuing through Tuesday is so important. We cannot allow them to do this last-minute push so they get sort of that artificial majority on an issue that actually they're underwater on. That's what they're good at doing. That's what they know how to do. And that's why an August 8th election scares me. Because if they can take advantage of most people not paying attention or us thinking, well, the poll looked okay, all of a sudden they sneak up and they win. And on an issue where the minority now, they not only sneak a win, but then on issue after issue after issue going forward, they win every time they hit 41%, which is truly the rest of our lifetimes in minority rule. The next 3 days, this is going to sound over the top, but I believe it the more I talk about this. I don't think any of us are going to have a more important couple days in our lifetimes when it comes to Ohio's democracy. Because if we don't beat this thing, nothing else we need to do to turn the state around can happen. Can happen. So everything you can do in the next couple days, please do. I'll be doing that. You'll be doing that. That's why I was excited to come up here. And let me close with something we talked about at the table for 1 second. This is going to sound strange, but beating issue one is defense. That's all it is. It's stopping something really bad, just like stopping Cynical 5 was defense. Aren't we all tired of only playing defense? Isn't it getting old? We play defense, we celebrate, and then, okay, we won, let's move on. No more. What my 8-year-olds and 6-year-old understand, they're little soccer players. If one team's only on defense and the other is always on offense, who's winning? The team on offense. So after August 8th, let's celebrate. Let's take a couple days off. Maybe a couple. And then it's offense time. If we win this thing. If we lose it, we got some real licking our wounds. It's going to be tougher. We still need to keep going. But especially if we win. If we succeed in playing defense, offense begins that same week. Offense begins, we win big on the Reproductive Rights Amendment in November, don't we? We win big. That's offense. That's us going on offense. What is also offense, and that's why I was so glad, did Brian mention what he did? And I don't know if you have a primary, I'm not endorsing, but every single extremist in the Ohio State House who voted for issue 1 needs to be held accountable in the next election. Every last one of them. Shame on us if we have any uncontested races in this state ever again. When we allow, you know that the authors of the abortion bans in Texas, in Mississippi, the one that led to Dobbs, and in Ohio that led to the 10-year-old rape from going to Indiana, not one of them had an opponent in the next election. And we wonder why they keep being extremists. No more. And I'll work with you if you want anyone near here that's a district, if there's someone uncontested, let's work together and let's all commit that by the December deadline, no way do any of them run again without opposition. And sometimes opposition means they lose, but at the very least, it means someone knocked on thousands of doors in that district and said, oh, I know you think that person's the nice person in the parade that waves, but did you know they voted to send a 10-year-old rape victim to Indiana? Do you know they voted to attack our democracy with issue 1? And there's a litany of so many things, but when we don't, did you know they gave away money from public schools to give to their rich friends? So our schools are doing worse while their rich friends do better. Did you know that? If we're explaining that every day, door to door, it's the first time these people ever felt any accountability. And sometimes when you do that, you win. But even when you don't, you begin to bring accountability back to a place that has no accountability. In the long term, long game, that is vital. When we leave these districts uncontested, we allow the downward spiral of extremism to explode. And Democrats have been doing that all over the country for far too long. So we win in November, but we recruit through November too. Up and down the ballot, local, school board, another front line for democracy, state house. No extremists get a pass anymore. And then we roll into next year, and we run hard in those races. We obviously get Sherrod Brown reelected. But as we're saying at our table, we also have a chance to flip the Ohio Supreme Court. Joe Dieters is the third. He's running. We got to protect our two Democrats who've been very good. You flip the Joe Dieters seat, you win the Supreme Court back. And that's also how we end gerrymandering. And I also believe we will likely have a gerrymandering petition to start gathering signatures for at some point, and let's get that on the ballot in 24 as well. So that's offense. That is going on offense. So next 3 days, do everything you can. Run through the tape. And then maybe on the 9th or 10th, we can do a Zoom call and talk about all the things we're going to do to go on offense for the coming months and years. Thank you all very, very much. I so respect the hard work you're doing, led by your wonderful chairman. Thank you.
All right, thank you.